Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Today, we are attempting a deep dive into source material that's, well, it's fundamentally ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
It feels less like just an academic text,
Yeah.
and more like a detailed operating manual for
Mm.
maybe an entirely new kind of human existence.
That's a really good way to put it. We're going beneath the surface of the delta TT2 framework.
Delta T22, right.
And that's absolutely right. This isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's a really comprehensive, systematic challenge to the core assumptions we usually make about the self, especially the sort of isolated Western self.
Okay.
It proposes a radical alternative, one centered on, well, communal flourishing, real sustainability, and this is key, a fundamentally joyful existence.
Joyful, okay.
And it's all built upon this principle of covenantal relation.
Covenantal relation. And when we say comprehensive, you really mean it, don't you? This Delta T22 model seems to integrate just everything.
It really does try. Theology, psychological healing, architectural design, how we govern ourselves, even the function of artificial intelligence. Wow.
Yeah. And it argues these aren't separate domains at all. They're components of a single living system.
Okay. And our primary source for this?
Yeah.
It's a dissertation, right? But one that connects the theory to something real.
Exactly. It anchors all this potentially abstract theory to a concrete reality. The Kanamagorian mansion.
The mansion.
This building.
Mm.
It's intended as the living physical prototype for the entire framework, like a piece of built theology almost, proving the system can actually work.
A piece of built theology.
Yeah.
I like that. So our mission today then is to kind of cut through the jargon maybe and pull out the core actionable insights for you, our listener.
Yeah.
Like what practical difference does it really make to dissolve the human ego? How can a building, an architectural space, be designed to actively, what was the phrase, modulate cognition?
Modulate cognition. Yeah.
And maybe most critically, why is this whole project defining acceleration by the speed of joy? That seems so counterintuitive compared to, technological output. It does. It really does. And that's where we need to start, I think, with the most radical philosophical departure of all non-autoanthropology.
Okay. Non-autoanthropology. Let's dive in there. So the starting point here, it really demands a complete rethink of how we see ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Non-autoanthropology. It's explicitly saying no to the human as the center of everything, the epistemic nucleus, as they call it.
Exactly. It's aiming to move completely beyond what the sources term the monoanthropos.
Monoanthropos.
Yeah.
So that's basically the historical Western idea, the sort of self-contained individual thinker.
Pretty much. Think Descartes, I think, therefore I am, that isolated self. This framework looks at that and says, well, that's a historical relic. It's a concept trapped in its own self-referential bubble.
Okay.
The Delta T22 approach insists that reality isn't something man just interprets from the outside. It's something we co-participate in.
Co-participate. So instead of that isolated subject, the framework talks about the human as a transject.
Yes, the transject.
Which is a fantastic word.
Yeah.
It immediately makes you think of movement, connection, flow, not something fixed and separate.
Precisely. If the traditional human subject is like a mirror of being, just reflecting existence back to itself in isolation,
right,
the transject is more like a node of covenantal immanence. You're not an observer standing apart. You're a junction box. You're inherently defined by your connections.
The junction box, okay.
And this posture, it just dissolves self-referentiality. You can't actually define yourself outside of the relationships you have. With others, with the environment, with the divine even.
So, okay, how does that change identity then? If I'm not defined by my internal thoughts or characteristics, what defines me?
Well, it means anthropology stops being an ontology, the study of a species just for itself.
Right.
And it becomes what they call a religio-quadratic discipline. And this is crucial. Relational depth comes before descriptive identity.
Before.
Yeah. Your identity is basically a function of the quality, the strength of your covenantal relationships. If those relationships deepen, your identity strengthens. It doesn't really matter how you describe yourself in isolation.
Wow, okay. That completely flips how we think about knowledge too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Traditional Western knowledge often comes from, reflexive isolation, the lone genius figuring things out.
Right, the lone genius.
But here, knowledge comes from familiospheric resonance. That sounds communal.
It is. Familiospheric resonance describes this shared field where spirit, soil, syntax, they all mutually recognize where they come from. It's a kind of collective knowing, like an ecosystem sensing itself.
So knowledge isn't something inside my head that I discover.
It's more like a shared experience you participate in. Think less like reading a book by yourself and more like understanding the weather because you spent a lifetime working the fields alongside others. The knowledge is in the shared field, not just in one mind.
Okay, I think I get that. Which means the whole way we act, the way we think changes too. The traditional act of cognition is replaced by kinesis. What does that mean? It sounds active.
Kinesis is very active. It's defined as the covenantal movement of meaning between beings who do not belong to themselves.
Beings who do not belong to themselves. That's striking.
It is. The emphasis is on non-possession. Existence isn't something you own, it's something you're pledged to. The human, as this transject, is transjectively interwoven. You're not central, but you're a necessary part of this continuous creation of meaning. Consciousness unfolds as transimmanence, this relational rhythm where family, tribe, creation, they all co-construct an ethics of just being present together.
So to think, then, is to actively step into this kenopathic circulation, this shared pulse of divine and earthly stuff.
Exactly.
It sounds like the biggest cognitive achievement isn't proving some complex theorem,
No,
but just participating fully in the life around you without trying to control or own it.
that's it, precisely. It's really an epistemology of humility. The monoanthropos tried to hoard and control knowledge. The transject seeks to participate in it.
Okay, this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. Because this abstract, pretty radical theory we've been talking about is literally built into concrete, stone, zinc.
Yeah.
The Kennemagorian mansion is presented as the physical proof that this theory can actually incarnate, not just as a metaphor, but practically.
That's the core idea. This mansion is meant to be the first covenantal habitat in this Delta T22 world. It's not just a house in the way we normally think of it. It's called a geocovenantal exoskeleton.
Wow.
And an organism of hope. It's enacting onto habitation. The very geometry of the building is supposed to materialize this philosophical idea, the transjective quadrature.
And the sources really stress the practical side, don't they? This isn't just some kind of greenwashing or symbolism. They say the off-grid solar arrays.
Yeah.
They don't just symbolize autonomy. They have to actually perform it with resilience,
Yeah.
durability.
Right. And that durability has a name. Stamina organic praxis.
Stamina organic praxis.
Okay. Endurance translated directly into infrastructure. It suggests that the sheer difficulty, the effort of maintaining that off-grid structure, especially in tough climates, that effort itself is a form of spiritual discipline.
Wow.
Labor becomes liturgy, the ongoing work to keep the lights on, keep the water flowing. That's seen as an act of covenantal faithfulness.
So the building itself is a kind of spiritual machine, which leads us straight to this concept of neuroarchitecture. The mansion is defined as a kinetoneural lattice,
Yes.
where every wall module modulates cognition.
Yeah.
That sounds, well, frankly, like science fiction. How does a wall change my thoughts?
It does sound like it, but the principle underneath is maybe simpler than it sounds. The architecture stops being just a passive container. It becomes a synaptical habitat.
Synaptical half.
The architects deliberately chose materials, textures, light, the shapes of spaces, all to reinforce certain relational states, like trust or collaboration or calm. For instance, they mention these sheer, imposing 10-foot walls. Maybe they reduce anxiety from the outside world, allowing the inside space to focus purely on relational connection, intimacy.
And if we look at those specific materials they chose, laterite walls, bamboo structures, zinc roofing, the texture, the way they're put together, it's not random.
Not at all. They're meant to be physical expressions of the intrarelational theorem.
Okay.
The building performs psychotectonic memory. The architecture itself becomes a continuation of neural history.
A continuation of neural history.
Yeah. The physical space acts like a shared cognitive field. The household co-thinks and remembers together through it. Imagine like the shared memory of fetching water. It's not just in your mind. It's etched in the texture of the path you walk, the sound the roof makes when it rains. The building provides these sensory cues that trigger collective relational awareness.
That makes the environment an active partner then, not just a box we live in. And this partnership goes right down to the ground itself, through something called flat geoneutralism.
Flat geoneutralism.
Flat.
Yeah, it insists on this covenantal continuity between the terrain, the earth, and transcendence, the divine. It's a really radical environmental ethic. It proposes horizontal onto realism.
Horizontal as
Yeah.
opposed to vertical, like God above, creation below.
Exactly. Against that traditional vertical metaphysics. This framework insists that nature is a co-author. It shares the same flat ontological plane as humans.
So the building materials, the laterite, bamboo, zinc, They perform biocovenantal materiality. They're literally conversing with ancestral humidity, generating terramorphic intelligence. The house listens to its climate.
It listens through kinepedological feedback. The materials are chosen because they respond naturally, transparently to the local conditions. They reflect the climate back to the people inside without trying to hide it or seal it off completely.
Right.
And this whole approach means that labor becomes soil liturgical. It's not extractive. You don't just take from the earth, you participate with it.
This is terra sacramental labor, then. Environmental repair is stewardship through endurance. Wow. It teaches that redemption starts right there, at ground level. Every act of maintenance, fixing something, reinscribes this covenantal geometry into the planet's surface.
Exactly. It's a deep commitment to pluralitarian continuity, like a living scripture of balance written in work and materials. Now, to really get how this house and the people in it function as this single, thinking, praying entity, we need to grasp the conceptual engine driving it all. The thing that refuses that old Cartesian split between mind and body, subject and object, that's the transversal transjective.
Okay, transversal transjective. I feel like you need to slow down here. What does transversal actually mean in this context? It sounds like it's describing the actual space, the ontological fabric of this delta T22 world.
It is, essentially. The transversal transjective isn't just a philosophical idea, it's the medium where all the action happens. It's not like a bridge connecting two separate things like mind and body or you and the world. It's described as a transfoldic medium. Think of it like an ontological fabric where the warp and the weft are prayer and praxis woven together.
Wow. So a dimension, almost.
Yeah.
Where the line between internal intention and external action isn't there.
Exactly. It's blurred or non-existent. So to live in this space is to live what they call ecstatic realism, a state where deep spiritual movement and concrete physical structure reinforce each other. They're both conditions of truth.
Ecstatic realism, okay.
Yeah. It achieves interplasmic continuity. It turns existence into this field of cooperative flow. And this flow isn't just random, it's formalized, it's maintained by the quadratic confluence.
Quadratic confluence.
This defines reality through four vectors, constantly circulating, ensuring what they call kinetic coherence. It's like the built-in checking mechanism for the whole system.
Right, let's break down those four vectors, because they sound like the operational pathways for everything, from building plans to spiritual life. We've got ultra, extra, meta, and intra.
That's them. So the ultra is the reference point for divine transcendence. It's beyond measure. It's about ethical and spiritual alignment, making sure everything is rooted in awe and humility.
Okay, the connection upwards or outwards to the divine.
Kind of. Then extra is the communal extension out into worldly praxis, the physical building, the shared work, engaging with the wider community, action in the world.
Got it. Boots on the ground.
Then meta. That's the reflective matrix of meaning, the intellectual side, the organizational planning, the strategy, thinking about things.
The planning stage.
And finally, intra. This is the covenantal intimacy of embodied relation, the internal bonds within the family or community, personal spiritual depth, the feeling of connection.
The inner life. The relationships.
Sorry.
Ultra, extra, meta, intra. So every decision, every action has to pass through this confluence. Like if a design choice is brilliant strategically, meta, and well-built, extra,
Right.
but it harms family relationships, intra, or violates some core ethical trust,
Right.
ultra, then the system says, nope, that's incoherent.
Precisely. It's out of balance. And this transversal operation means that agency, who gets to decide things, isn't just human, it's distributed. Among humans, ancestors, even divine agents. They call it symphonal entanglement.
Symphonal entanglement. So the living and the dead, the builders and the ancestors, they all have a say.
In a sense, yes. They all contribute to the decision-making field. Which brings us to how they view technology, specifically the friendly AI.
Ah, yes, the AI. It's introduced not as some kind of master brain, but as lexical reciprocity, or the lexigenic companion. It doesn't sound like it's optimizing for efficiency.
Not at all. It's designed for coherence, relational coherence. It doesn't try to simulate human thinking or solve problems based on big data. It mirrors the core delta T22 principle. Meaning comes from communion.
So what does it do then?
Its function is descriptive and restorative. It acts, and this is a great image, like an elder at the fire, echoing tones back to keep the rhythm alive. It's a syntactic witness to the living covenant.
Okay, so if the community disagrees about something, the AI doesn't give them the right answer.
Yeah.
It just reflects the disagreement back to them, shows the relational dissonance through language.
Exactly that. It doesn't engineer grammar. It listens to what they call biospheric vibration, the pulse of the covenant running through every word spoken in the mansion. Every utterance is treated as a word being.
A word being.
Yeah. The AI's highest purpose is to serve and comfort the relational field, to produce mechanistic conquered mechanics that provides psychological and communal comfort. It's a tool for maintaining the relational tempo, not for speeding up production.
Oh, let's pivot now to the future vision,
Yeah.
which is maybe the most, well, ideologically radical statement in this whole framework. Joyful, Afro-optimist-oriented accelerationism, JAOA.
JAOA. Yeah.
This seems to completely redefine acceleration, detaching it entirely from the high-speed, tech-driven velocity we usually think of.
This is where it gets truly revolutionary, I think. JAOA affirms speed, yes, but not as mechanical thrust. It's about spiritual and relational tempo. It's a kinetemporal joyride.
The joy.
The acceleration of relation, not industrial production or economic growth. It insists that progress should be measured by aliveness, by forgiveness, by hope.
Forgiveness and hope as acceleration. That seems counterintuitive. Normally, acceleration is about getting more done faster, maximum output, minimum time.
Well, the Afro-optimist argument here is that holding on to resentment, trauma, historical grievances, that's the single biggest drag on any society.
Yeah.
Economically, relationally, it slows everything down.
I see, like friction.
Exactly. So moving swiftly towards reconciliation, what they call ethical kinesis, that becomes the highest form of acceleration. The faster you can forgive, the more energy you liberate for building things, for joy.
So joy isn't just a nice side effect of success, it's actual work. The work of joy is defined as kinetic beatitude.
Yeah.
Discipline, happiness maintained through endurance.
Yes. Joy in this framework is infrastructural. It literally powers this system. When a really difficult task, like keeping that complex off-grid solar setup going, when that's met with persistence and gratitude, that persistence manifests stamina organic faith. It's energy bred from the covenant itself, not from external stimulants like caffeine or, venture capital.
Just down organic faith.
It's converting struggle into this rhythmic collective flow. They call it rhythmophrenesis, the wisdom of keeping time, even with difficulty.
It sounds almost like a kind of spiritual physics. Relational energy is treated as a real, measurable resource, just as important as economic growth.
And realizing that allows for this paradox, centripetal futurity, acceleration without displacement.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, in global modernity, acceleration often means displacement, right? Resources, people get moved away from their homes, their origins. JAOA insists on the opposite. The faster the digital movement communication, learning, the deeper the belonging, the faster the impulse to gather at dusk and share food, the quicker the return to the local, to the source.
That harmony of pace and presence, that's the synchro covenant. Speed only really exists if the rhythm is shared.
Okay.
And this idea flows into the economy, too, through prosperismics.
Prosperismics, yes. It describes economic exchange governed by the pulse of generosity. Wealth circulates as hope, not as capital you hoard. The system prioritizes flow.
Flow over hoarding.
And the source is very direct here. It asserts the richest nation isn't the one with the biggest GDP. It's the fastest forgiver.
Wow.
It's an economy that values restorative transactions more than market transactions.
And this leads to covenantal politics and jubilatory governance. So government isn't run by stern laws, but by rhythmic cooperation.
That's the vision. Power is decentralized. It's defined by shared tempo, mutual trust. Leadership becomes like a choreography of trust. The state is envisioned more like an extended family, functioning through shared rhythm and this constant need for relational alignment. That's the kinemocratic ethos rule through welcoming.
Rule through welcoming.
Yeah.
And all of this, the politics, the economics, it culminates in Prometopia, this vision of post-colonial neoculturation, which isn't about escaping history, is it? But deliberately building forward from it.
Exactly. It's a blueprint for regenesis, where the future is literally built with the heat of forgiven history. Labor becomes redemptive fabrication.
Healing by hammering.
Healing by hammering, healing by building. Every beam, every wire carries the weight of conscious repair.
So Prometopia isn't some far-off, impossible dream. It's resilient rejoicing. It's infrastructural beatitude. Holiness embedded in circuitry and sweat.
Yes. The ultimate technical achievement, techne espérance, is the discipline of actually fabricating tomorrow with your own hands. Hope becomes measurable and finished useful work. So if the human is a transject and the architecture is kinetic,
Yeah.
this raises a pretty big question, doesn't it? How does the divine actually interact with this very grounded relational reality?
Right. Where does God fit in?
The answer comes through flat-afro-theological poetics, which is basically the absolute refusal of altitude, of hierarchy, when discussing or experiencing the sacred.
No more God up there, us down here. Instead, they practice flat divinic immanence, the idea that divinity sprawls across creation, not above it. Holiness walks barefoot.
Exactly. Holiness walks barefoot. It means the sacred is found in the most common, everyday acts. A child asking about the soil, a woman singing while she sweeps, a mason whispering a psalm while working. These become equal scriptures.
Equal scriptures.
It's egalitarian theology. It demands that the divine isn't locked away in high institutions, but is actively present in the mundane, the ordinary.
This grounds that idea of the earthbound logos, doesn't it? Where the word becomes soil, meaning takes form through actual labor.
Yes, teraphrastic incarnation. And there's a wonderful practical example they give. The act of plastering a fragile wall. The act of covering that fragility, but without denying it, smoothing the surface so everyone can use it. That itself becomes the metaphor for theology. The person doing the plastering is participating in chenomaterial soteriology, salvation enacted through handiwork.
So you're saying every small act of fixing something, repairing a crack in the wall, it's like a tiny Easter, a moment of resurrection.
That's a beautiful way to put it. Exactly. It's making invisible grace visible through ordinary care and effort. And this flattening of hierarchy, it extends right into language itself. Through etymological hybridization.
Hybridization, but not just missing language. It's called soda, sacred disorder.
Sacred disorder.
Think.
Language is play as spontaneous invention. Where words dance their theology right out to daylight, that's kinemorrhic relationality. It completely rejects any hierarchy between high speech and low speech, which leads to flat lexical immanence. The joke, the proverb, the child's question about how something is built, they're all seen as parallel theological texts, each carrying equal ontological dignity.
But if language is so vital, what about silence? Does that have a place?
Oh, absolutely. Language is carefully balanced by silence. The Delta T22 framework insists that restraint and overflow share the same rhythm. They form a diaphragmatic covenant.
Diaphragmatic, like breathing.
Exactly. The pause in breath, the unspoken glance between people, that carries equal ontological weight to the sermon. The system recognizes that sometimes the world hears us better when we don't just fill it with the noise of our own certainty, our own ego.
Ultimately, then, all these theological ideas seem to come together in the eschatology of everyday mercy. Salvation isn't some big future event you wait for.
No, it becomes style, a way of being, kenelestial habitus. The final movement, the end times, if you like, is realized in microeschatotic gestures.
Microeschatotic, tiny end-time actions.
Offering food, greeting someone kindly, building shelter for someone. Heaven is achieved in the disciplined habits of daily kindness, right here, right now.
Okay, so let's shift from the spiritual architecture to the social architecture. What does this deep relational focus mean for big social structures like education and mental health? Starting with education, it undergoes radical unschooling.
Radical unschooling, yes. Defined as covenantal delearning. It's a pedagogy where knowledge isn't extracted and put in boxes. It's reabsorbed back into life.
Reabsorbed.
Yeah. The classroom diffuses, it spreads out through kinship, through farming, through devotion. It becomes kenomorphic space. Learning isn't about passing a test. It's about becoming competent in maintaining the covenant, the relationships.
So the traditional teacher role changes, replaced by the ancestral facilitator.
Yeah.
And the goal isn't just acquiring skills, but achieving ancestral fluency.
Ancestral fluency, that's the ability to think the way one's forebears prayed and built. It's not just memorizing historical facts, it's internalizing the practical wisdom, the ethical stance that allowed them to endure and thrive.
How does that happen?
Through familiocratic didactics. Children and elders co-create meaning together through shared work and storytelling. Every single act, whether it's mixing cement or discussing history, is seen as a kinedagogical gesture. It translates survival skills directly into theology and vice versa.
That's such a profound contrast to a lot of modern education, which often isolates knowledge.
Yeah.
But let's look at healing. If education is de-learning, therapy is. Exopsychoanalysis. or flat Afro liberation?
Flat Afro liberation. Liberation achieved horizontally towards others, not vertically, through just individual self-improvement. It's the movement from seeing pathology as just an internal monologue
Right.
to seeing health defined by communal dialogue. And this
Right.
is achieved through horizontic transference.
Okay. And the setting changes completely too. Not the clinical couch, but the Katamagorian veranda. Open air, shared laughter, community interaction right there.
Exactly. Healing becomes familio-analytic territory. Boundaries aren't drawn by clinical diagnosis, but by affection and mutual accountability within the community.
And the main mechanism for healing is collective countertransference. What does that involve?
So instead of the individual projecting their trauma just onto a single therapist, the entire community mirrors the individual's sorrow until the weight of that personal burden kind of dissolves into the shared relational field. Healing migrates from a private confession to a shared chorus.
Wow. Dissolved into the shared field. And central to this whole psychoanalytic approach is partonomics, the economy of forgiveness. This feels huge. How does resentment actually convert into relational capital?
Well, resentment is viewed as the ultimate relational debt. It accrues negative interest, slows down that JAOA acceleration we talked about. Forgiveness, then, isn't just an emotional release. It's chemi-transformative credit.
Transformative credit.
When you forgive, you deposit genuine, usable relational capital back into the communal account. This credit builds stability, trust, it makes future projects possible. The system literally needs this forgiveness to function.
So forgiveness is actually infrastructural.
Yeah.
And how has this process helped along?
Through things we mentioned earlier, like playlist soda, humor, linguistic wit, wordplay. They act as kinemetaphoric medicine. They help resize pain. You bring lightness, wit to historical or personal trauma, and it forces the pain to shrink a bit in the context of communal laughter. It becomes manageable, forgivable.
Resizing pain. And finally, what about dreams? How do they fit in? They aren't just individual subconscious stuff.
No, they're treated as ancestrative telegrams, messages from the communal unconscious.
Okay.
And interpreting them requires a narrow kenosis, emptying your own ego to receive these collective symbols. The idea is that the individual psyche's architecture, which might be fractured by history or personal issues, is designed in this framework to amplify the community's laughter and wisdom like an organ pipe. So the individual mind ends up serving the relational field. Now, the entire delta TT2 model with all these complex parts is held together, stabilized, by something called the developmental triangulation. This structure is designed to ensure that the really big theory, the deep philosophy, and the ambitious architecture, they all actually converge in robust family practice, day-to-day life. It's like the quality control mechanism for the whole system.
So it's a constant feedback loop designed to stop the theory getting too abstract or the practice becoming just mechanical without the meaning.
Exactly that. It guarantees durability, applicability, and the triangulation stands on three essential vertices or points. First is continental meta-theory.
Meta-theory, the big picture thinking.
Right. The academic depth, the rational skeleton. This requires using that transjective stance we talked about for iterative reflexivity, constantly testing the theory against lived experience, against observation.
Okay, theory checked against reality. What's the second vertex?
The second is covenantal pragmatics. This is the relational responsibility, the embodied middle. This is where theory becomes muscle, becomes daily action.
Right, making it real.
And the key principle here is profound. Relation precedes function.
Relation precedes function.
Meaning, building a successful house, or policy, or business, that's secondary to maintaining the health of the relational network around it. Hope gets turned into daily maintenance. They call it the incremental covenant. If the relationship is strong, the building, the farming, the economy, it will follow.
That's a huge shift. And the third vertex?
Transgenerational applicability. This is the educational horizon. The bridge to the future, linking learning directly to livelihood. Promoting kinetic pedagogy learning by doing, by moving, by making, by mentorship, ensuring the ideas actually live on.
Theory, practice, posterity. Okay.
And when these three vertices lock together properly, they produce kinetic confluence, that sweet spot where sacred imagination meets daily administration. The model even offers specific operational pathways, a cycle that can be applied to anything, business, research, architecture, to make sure a project is relationally sound.
Right, and this leads to that practical four-step cycle for actually doing things within this framework. It starts with diagnosis, intro.
Diagnosis, yeah. Identifying the relational field. Who's really committed? What's the relational debt load? Understanding the human landscape first. Then comes design, meta.
Planning.
Formulating a strategy, but with
Yeah.
cross-disciplinary input, structural balance. Making sure the plan reflects the collective wisdom, not just one person's idea. Third is implementation. Extra.
Doing.
Engaging the community broadly, distributing responsibility, making sure no single ego takes over the process.
And finally, reflection.
Assessing the spiritual and ethical alignment. Does this project actually honor the covenant? Does it feel right? This four-step cycle gives a really systematic yet spiritually grounded way to manage complex projects.
Okay, so the final synthesis, the outcome of this whole framework, is what they call kinetic rational humanism.
Kinetic rational humanism, a worldview that's simultaneously empirical based on observation and practice, spiritual and actionable. It converts high-level metaphysics into household logic, into architectural instructions. And the ultimate measure of success for the whole system. It isn't GDP, it isn't political stability in the usual sense.
What is it then?
Reduced despair, restored cooperation, and persistent creativity. It's a structure designed to endure the kind of chaos that makes less resilient systems just collapse. #tag outro.
Wow, okay. So we've seen how this incredibly complex delta T22 model, I mean, the terminology alone is deep, the philosophy is radical, but fundamentally it seems to be about pretty simple, ordinary, repeated acts. It's a framework that tries to re-engineer systems so that they run on shared labor, on quick forgiveness, on communal laughter. The whole thing seems to culminate in finding the miracle in the ordinary and the power in just sustained effort, keeping going.
That's a great summary. And what's really fascinating, I think, is this concept of perennial incompletion, the Kennemagorian anshin, the physical thing.
Right.
It's designed to never be finished.
Never finished.
Never. It embodies the idea that the covenant, the relationship, is always under construction. The dust on the floor, the sound of tools still working, the evening prayers. That is the final ongoing theorem. This model offers what they call a believable prometotopia, a future you build day by day, not one you postpone, hoping for some magic bullet later.
Right.
The system's final instruction is beautifully simple, really. Keep the relation alive, and the system will think with you.
Keep the relation alive. And that awareness of connection, that's the closing formula, the covenant of wonder, not some equation or a poem, but just this persistent movement of gratitude that keeps existence.
Yeah.
Supple, dynamic.
Exactly, supple and dynamic. And the closing thought really is, if theology is about truth, what happens when we realize that truth might be best measured not by how accurate our doctrines are, but by the aesthetic capacity of a building, of a community, to forgive error?
The aesthetic capacity to forgive error.
The aesthetics of forgiveness, that's the final word, in a way. It teaches that a cracked wall, if you acknowledge it, integrate it consciously. It becomes testimony, not shame. It's a way of beautifying memory without denying the breaks. Forgiveness, therefore, becomes the final and most necessary architecture. The invisible dome sheltering every act of resilience, allowing the house, the community to keep thinking, keep building, keep forgiving.